and thank you for joining us. Today we have special guest Jode Susan Millman. Jode is a lifelong resident of Poughkeepsie, New York, which serves as the setting for her legal suspense novels. In her writing, she draws upon her experiences as an attorney to capture the tensions that arise when a small community is rocked by tragedy. Author of the best-selling book Seats, New York, Theater Guidebook, Jode's debut thriller novel, The Midnight Call, released by Immortal Works Publishing in June of 2019. The Midnight Call was shortlisted for the 2014 Glue Award and received the first place ribbon as the Best Police Procedural. She received her BA and JD from Syracuse University, and while studying at NYU Law School, she served as a contributing editor to the Kamenstein Legislative History Project, a compendium and analytical index of materials leading to the Copyright Act of 1976. Concentrating on law and literature, Jode obtained her MA in English Literature from Eastern Michigan University and is taught at Detroit Mercy Law School and Marist College. Presently, she co-hosts and co-produces the Backstage with the Bardavon Podcast, which invites the listener backstage for intimate conversations with musicians and performers appearing at the Bardavon 1869 Opera House in Poughkeepsie, New York, and UPAC in Kingston, New York. The podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and GooglePlay. Jode is a member of Mystery Writers of America, International Thriller Writers, Sisters in Crime and Romance Writers of America, and her legal column can be found in Sync, the Sisters in Crime Quarterly. Welcome, Jode Susan Millman.
Hey, Terry, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. So we've had a brief opportunity to get introduced, and I tell you what, it's definitely one of the best conversations that I've had with an author in a while. I love your energy. I love your smile, and I'm absolutely looking forward to this interview.
Well, me too. Me too.
All right, so Poughkeepsie. Tell me a little bit about your life in Poughkeepsie, and how did that inspire your book, The Midnight Call?
Well, first of all, lots of people don't know where Poughkeepsie is. Poughkeepsie is located about an hour and a half north of New York City, like halfway between New York and Albany, right on the beautiful Hudson River, which was discovered by Henry Hudson in 1609. So Poughkeepsie's been here a long time. And Poughkeepsie has a very interesting history. It was a whaling community for many years. It was one of the centers of transportation, and I have to mention this, it has the longest pedestrian walkway in the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was an old railroad bridge that was built in 1898, which literally connected the west coast to the east coast and across the Hudson River right at Poughkeepsie. In late 60s, it caught fire, and recently it was converted into the longest pedestrian walkway. So we've got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And being in love with the area and being in love with the Hudson Valley, I really wanted to create a writing series that reflected Poughkeepsie as a character in my books. So one of the things and let's kind of circle back to The Midnight Call. This is my debut novel, as you mentioned. It was released in June. And what inspired me was that when I was in junior high school, I had a history teacher. And he was a popular guy. Everybody loved him. And everybody's had the kind of teacher that they connect with and that they want to go back and visit when they graduate. Well, this history teacher was that kind of guy for everyone in the class. That was 1969. Fast forward 10 years. I graduated from law school. I come home. I'm looking for a job. I open up our local paper, the Poughkeepsie Journal, and in it, there's an article that says, teacher held in connection with student's death.
Oh,
and
wow.
there's my teacher's picture.
Oh,
so,
no.
Well, you can imagine the shock, not only to me, but to everybody in the community.
Yeah.
So it plagued me because I knew the victim's family. I knew all of the attorneys involved because I was just starting out my legal career. I knew, I knew the teacher. I mean, how many people can say they know a killer, right?
Right.
So this story kind of hung around in my mind, for about, I would have to say 10, 20 years. And we would follow it because it periodically rears its head in the local press. So in the back of my mind, I thought, one of these days I really would like to write a novel based upon this tension that's created in a community by a teacher killing a student.
That's great inspiration for a story, and I know that inspiration comes from many places, and usually it comes from within, and that is an absolutely amazing story on how you took something and then you connected it and then write a story around that as well too, and then to actually know who the murderer and everything. That, oh my goodness, that would be scary to me. It really would be.
Well, what I wanted to do was take that seedling of an idea and create a whole cast of characters, my characters, that could tell the story of this particular crime. So I can't really say that any of the characters are based upon anybody in real life. That's not what's going on. What's going on is that just that little idea of this tension of the murder and taking my characters and building my community. And that's what I've hopefully done in the novel.
Yeah. So I know that you're a member of Romance Writers, International Thriller Writers, and Mystery Writers of America. So your book, The Midnight Call, basically intertwines a great love story and an exhilarating plot, it sounds like. Do you think that this is basically a common theme within the thriller community?
Well, I think it's becoming more and more of a theme. But, honestly, if you look back to Agatha Christie, what was she writing in the 20s? The novel Death on the Nile was really based upon a love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
It was about a couple that's newly married, and the husband has jilted another woman. She's stalking them on this trip down the Nile, and people are dropping dead, like nobody's business. But at the heart of that story, it's about a romance. That's what is the inspiring event that sets forth this novel. And in a way, I believe that in the thriller community, it's important to blend genres because none of us live in a vacuum. Just because there's a character whose life is in peril, that doesn't mean that the rest of the world the rest of their world isn't being affected by it. They can still fall in love. They can still have babies. They can still have all kinds of crises on the job. I mean, that's real life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't live in a vacuum. Just because we're in peril doesn't mean the rest of our life goes away. So that's what I tried to do by having a cross-genre book. And I believe that that's more and more of a trend that you're seeing in thrillers and mysteries. And I hope so, because it's kind of fun for readers.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something there about cross-pollination of genres. So I think, out there within the book world, there's so many opportunities to create genres and multi-genres and cross-pollinate genres. And Amazon really, opens the floodgates for authors to create new genres. That's kind of exciting, isn't it?
It is. One of my favorite authors is a gal named Diana Gabaldon. And I was able to hear her speak. She wrote a book series, very popular, called Outlander, which is now a TV series on Stars. But her story, it's a historical fictional novel. But then again, it's fantasy because she's got characters that time travel from the 1940s to the 1740s. So you've got people all throughout every kind of genre who are doing mashups. It's really kind of interesting. I don't think I've recently read a book that's not a mashup.
Yeah. So I think that kind of creates a lot of new nuances, that are new and exciting, and twists and turns that could be unexpected, especially when you mash things up a little bit and twist it and turn it. It definitely keeps readers on their seats, so to speak.
Well, and what else is interesting? It also gives people who have different talents areas in which to write.
Yeah.
Because when you go to Barnes & Noble, there would be mystery, there would be fiction, Now you walk in there and there's so many different categories because there's so many different people who are able to express their individuality. Right. And this is so great about all of these mashups and all the paranormal. Before Twilight and Stephanie Meyer, people weren't writing about vampires, and now look at that whole industry.
Right.
It's really incredible. People can write about anything they want to write, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's open. Like I said, it's opened the floodgates, and I think that it definitely takes takes, I guess, being an author to another level, and it makes things less predictable and more opportunistic for authors and for readers as well, too. I think it's exciting on both sides, from an author perspective and from a reader perspective, to be able to do things like that.
What's also interesting, Terry, is that we live in a diverse society, and that we now have opportunities for people with diverse voices to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you look at Kevin Kwan, who wrote Crazy Rich Asians. I mean, there were books like that. The last one was The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, and that was like in the 70s. I mean, so you've got all these different voices. You've got Colson Whitehead. You've got all these amazing people with different things to say, and it is exciting for readers. It really is. It's a great time to be a reader and a great time to be a writer.
Oh, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And I think it's going to get better as well, too. So, I mean, I think that we're just at the beginning stages of the opportunity to be an author. So, I mean, if there's definitely people that are out there that think that it's too late, I think they're sadly mistaken. I think that there's more opportunity, like you said, today to do lots of things. The internet is still expanding. It's still growing. It's still trying to identify with what it's going to become. So tell me, at what point in your life did you want to become an author?
Well, you know, I kind of inherited becoming an author because my dad wrote a guidebook to the Broadway Theater in 1998, and it's called States New York, and it was a guide to all the Broadway theaters and off-Broadway theaters and stadiums and concert halls, and he had all kinds of seating charts and how to get free tickets and cheap tickets and transportation. Just an incredible amount of information. It was a guidebook you could stick in your pocket.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as soon as it was published, my father unexpectedly passed away.
Oh, sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, so the publishing company came to me and said, look, we have a bestseller on our hands. Would you do us a favor and maybe do a few speaking engagements, you know, to kind of carry the torch and the legacy for your dad? So when that happened, the book, as I said, got more traction, and they came to me and they said, look, would you like to, and are you interested in continuing on with the series? So, you know, my family had just relocated to Ann Arbor, Michigan. My husband got a job out there, and I wasn't practicing law at the time, and I was going to school to get my master's. So I said, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. So it wasn't anything I really ever wanted to do full time. You know, as a lawyer, we were natural storytellers. And as a lawyer, I was telling stories for my clients. And so now all of a sudden I was able to tell stories that I wanted to tell. Okay. But it wasn't anything, you know, I can't say that, you know, I wanted to, I didn't major in English. Let's put it that way. I always wanted to be a lawyer, basically. That's the answer to the question.
So I know my genre is nonfiction. I have 5 books that are published, and they're all in the nonfiction world. And one of the things that I noticed as I went back, because I did all my own editing as well, too, is that I went back and I noticed, I was like, wow, I really write exactly the way that I speak sometimes. And that kind of presented its challenges because it creates a different reading, reading experience for the potential reader. Things can be misunderstood in many different ways. So how has your career in law influenced any of the details within your book?
Well, I would have to say that, first of all, it gave me the knowledge to write a legal thriller.
Okay.
So, a lawyer, I think it would really be impossible to write a legal thriller because you have to know how to research the laws, you have to know all the technicalities. And as a lawyer, we tell stories.
Right.
And so we learn vocabulary, we learn plotting, we learn some really basic skills. But we don't learn things like characterization. We don't learn pacing. So I would say that being a lawyer gave me those basic skills. And then once I started to write and take writing classes, then I kind of, my writing skills blossomed from that point onward. But honestly, I could say that if I weren't a lawyer, there's no way I could have written a legal thriller. No way.
I know it's really challenging. I know, there's a lot, like you mentioned, doing research for writing books. I've known authors that have traveled, over to Europe to do research for particular books. And I know myself, I have a lot of knowledge and experience within my books. And, and everybody has their own, their own knowledge, their own experience and how they do that. And so me being within a retired military person, that drew me really to writing about leadership and self-help, motivation, professional development type stuff. So what actually attracted you to crime fiction?
Well, again, being a lawyer, I got to see the dark underside, the dark underbelly of human nature. I was a divorce attorney, so there you go.
Okay. Well, you definitely had to be able to tell some stories on that one, though, didn't you?
Oh yeah, the stories I could tell, but I'm sworn to attorney-client privilege.
I understand.
I was able to see how people who loved each other and were so emotionally connected become mortal enemies. And
Yeah.
that kind of, I liked the tension that created. And I saw the opportunity to take that tension and turn, and make stories out of it, which was kind of interesting. And, getting back to can I circle back to your point about nonfiction and researching? Because to me, researching is absolute key. If you're writing, let's say, a legal thriller or a crime or environmental thriller, you have to know your field.
Right.
And I was fortunate to be able to say, okay, I know the legal stuff, but in the midnight call, my protagonist, Jesse, suffers medical issues.
Okay.
We have the antagonist who suffers from mental health issues. And we have police procedure. Now, in order for me to accurately portray that to readers, I wanted to make sure that I got it right.
Yeah.
So I was able to do research like yourself and contact friends that I knew who were doctors, who were psychiatrists, who were policemen, and sit down with them and say, look, have I got this right? Because I wanted to make sure that, just as you do, when my readers walk away, they've learned something, and they've learned something accurate.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to both of us, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, right?
Absolutely. So one of the questions that I always ask authors is I know that being an author is challenging and tough in and of itself, and there are many challenges within writing a book, like doing research and this, that, and the other. So I think one of the most challenging things to write is to write your own death. If you had to write your own death, how would you do it?
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't. Oh my goodness. I don't think I could either. It's one of those things that I know we try to be positive and this, that, and the other, but I definitely don't think that I could do that either.
I'm going to live forever. I'm immortal. What can I tell you?
Well, you could always write that within a book. So many opportunities there. With myself being in the nonfiction world, so I write a lot of motivation, self-help, professional development type books. I also write about success. And I know that success means something different for everyone. So what does literary success look like to you?
Well, to me, it's being able to connect to readers and having readers, first of all, engage with my characters and become so drawn into the story that when they're reading it, they forget all time. They're really having an immersive experience. And when they're done with it, that they want to connect with me, whether it's on social media. I mean, I've had people who've been emailing me, which is to me like the ultimate feeling of having a fan contact me and tell me that they really loved my book. But it's not, I mean, of course I'd love to tell you that I would love to have Oprah pick my book or have Reese Witherspoon pick my book. But to me, that's for their book clubs. But that's not really what it's all about. It's having people connect with my characters and my stories and want more of both.
You made a great point, and you kind of alluded to something here, but I'm going to hammer it home with a quote. So there was a great quote that was out there that people will never remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that is a great quote. So when somebody reads your book, how do you want somebody to feel after reading your book?
Well, I want to raise questions. I want the readers to ask themselves whether or not they really know the people who are closest and dearest to them. Because here I was in my situation, I had a teacher. I had no idea that he was a psychopath. In Jesse's situation, she's in the same situation. She has no clue that Terrence Butterfield, who's the protagonist, has really been a monster in disguise for her entire life. So I want people to really ask, do they really know the people who are closest and dearest to them?
Yeah. So what is your thoughts about reviews? I know that reviews is one of those things that's kind of a mixed bag. What are your thoughts on reviews for your books?
Well, first of all, I've been very fortunate, and I've had some of my peers, I won't say review my books, but read my books and give me very lovely quotes. Steve Berry, who's a New York Times bestseller, gave me a lovely quote. Karen Dion and Jenny Milchman. To me, that probably means more than having some random reviewer,
Yeah.
give me a review.
And
Also
that's
readers read it, and on Amazon, and tell me that they like it and write nice comments. But it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's really a fearful process, as you know.
Absolutely. I know. So I gave my books out in the beginning to some beta readers and got a little bit of feedback and everything. And I know that we all hate to get that criticism. We all don't like to get that feedback, but sometimes it's that criticism and that feedback that really kind of propels us to take something to a whole different level. I don't really like it when people say, "Oh, your book was great." That gives me no information to feed off of. It doesn't help at all. And I know sometimes the harshest advice is also really the most useful advice. So what is the best piece of advice, or even the hardest piece of advice that someone gave you that propelled you to the next level?
Well, I was fortunate enough to take a class with a writer named David Morrell. And, as writers, fiction writers, we work really hard to get those first 5 or 10 pages spit spot so that really grabs the writer. So I'm in this workshop, and we're reading my section, and David Morrell says to me, without mincing any words, quite honestly, he said, I would cut out the first 10 pages. I would start the book when the phone call rings. And he was right. He was really right. And I had spent so much time, writing those first 10 pages, but it was really harsh criticism. I mean, he was really attacking me. Not with any malice, but he had my best interests of the manuscript, and he was absolutely 100% right.
Yeah.
I wasn't starting the book in the right place.
So within those first 10 pages, what actually was the struggle with writing?
Well, the first 10 pages, I mean, I wasn't sure how much setting I should put in, how much description of my character, how much emotional investment my character should make within the first 10 pages. And really, when you think about it, thrillers are action. Thrillers are boom, 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 boom. You have to suck that reader in. And that's what I tried. That's what really David Morrell pointed out to me. You want to suck them in with the first line. Now, who's going to put down a book where the first line is, I think I've killed someone? Quote, unquote. It's like, whoa, okay. And so that's a valuable lesson. So from all my books going forward, that's how I want to start them. I want to start them with a bang.
Right. Well, you have to draw that reader in. Nobody wants to read predictable. Okay. And if you, there was a movie, I can't remember what the movie was, that first opening scene was always shock and awe, you know what I'm saying? And that's like what got the movie going. And then it kind of backtracked and went into a more softer mode within the movie. Man, I can't remember the name of that movie. I wish I could remember the movie.
Sounds like Fast and Furious to me.
Fast and Furious.
They always start out, James Bond. I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, you get totally sucked into James Bond because the first 5 or 10 minutes of this film, he's placed in some, perilous situation, life-threatening situation.
Yeah.
As you see, it sucks us in. And so that was something I really wanted to capture at the beginning of the Midnight Call.
Okay. I think it was Saw. That's what the Saw series.
The Saw series?
Saw, yeah, S-A-W, Saw. Yeah, so the opening scene within the movie Saw always was just like shocking. I was like, oh my goodness.
I don't watch that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're also involved in a lot of I'm going to have trouble saying this word. Philanthropic
causes. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
That's hot. So I grew up living in Texas, so I have trouble saying big words sometimes.
Well, you know what philanthropy is? That's important.
Philanthropy. See, I can say that one. So I know that you also deal in a lot of philanthropy type endeavors. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. I believe that we should all give back to our communities as much as we can. And it's not always with money, but it can be with our actions, because our communities support us just the way, we support them.
Mhm.
So I'm very fortunate to sit on a board here in Dutchess County called the Dyson Foundation, which is one of the preeminent family foundations in the 7 counties that comprise the Hudson Valley. And through that, I've been able to kind of jumpstart programs like student film series, helping our local library get a bookmobile.
Mm.
I've been able to support our local theaters and also literary programs. So for me, that's been really important to be a part of that community and give back. And also, as an attorney, I represented a gentleman who passed away but had no heirs at all. And he died, and he was a very wealthy man. And his one wish was that all of his money should go to charity. So instead of just dispersing and writing checks when he died, we formed a family foundation. So since 2002, the foundation has donated over $500,000 to charities around the United States. And each summer, we're fortunate, we're able to put on a program called Movies Under the Walkway. When we started, I talked about that bridge over the Hudson River.
Yeah.
And we show movies and have entertainment, and it's a wonderful thank you to the community to have people come down for free, picnic, and get to watch, Back to the Future on a 20-foot screen, and Indiana Jones, Wonder Woman, and Spider-Man. I mean, what's better than that, right?
Sounds amazing. Yeah, it reminds me of one of my deployments. So I told you I was in the military, and we're over in Iraq, and we're having this get together out behind this big building, and somebody had a projector, and we projected a video game up on this big building. So we're playing Rock Band in the middle of Iraq, jamming out in this big building. I'm up here, and it was a blast. It was an absolute great time. I'm right there with you on the whole drive. I miss drive-ins. Speaking of that, I miss drive-ins.
Yeah, drive-ins are just, they're kind of a thing of the past, and that's what we tried to recreate. And
Yeah.
it's really cool if you think about it, that our children have grown up in a generation where they've mostly seen everything on TV. I mean, how many people have seen The Wizard of Oz on a large 20-foot screen? So
Yeah.
that's an experience. We did Grease. We just did Mary Poppins Returns. We're doing, what else are we doing? We're doing Shazam and Captain Marvel. I mean, all these things. And also, it costs a ton of money to take a family to the movies today.
Right.
So we're trying to get fun movies.
I think the drive-ins that I used to go to, I think it was like $5 or even $10 for a whole carload of people. And we would load everybody up in 2 cars and go out and take stuff with us. And we made a night of it because they would always play 3 movies, and we would stay there for all 3 movies. It was a night.
You're dating yourself.
I know, right? So
these things now where they're called dive-ins, where they're setting huge screens next to pools, and people are like floating in those inner tubes and watching the movie. Now that's I guess the next generation of the theater, right?
I've seen that. I don't know if I would do that, but we'll see what happens. So you did mention some charity work going on. Are there any other charities that you want to talk about or mention?
Well, I have to tell people, I have to encourage everybody, if they have a specialty, whether it's, especially as writers, help with the literacy group. Look at what your specific talent is and see if you can reach out and help somebody. If you like baseball, go talk to the Little League or the T-ball league. If you're golf, go teach some kids how to play golf. I mean, I think all of us have hidden talents that we should be able to share with people. I think that's important.
I agree wholeheartedly. So what's the easiest career decision you've ever made?
The easiest career decision, hands down, was saying yes to Immortal Works.
Okay.
It's a really interesting story because I'd started writing The Midnight Call back in 2010. And it was one of those things where processes where I tried to get an agent, I tried to get it published. After it had taken me about 3 or 4 years to actually write the first draft, or what I thought was a pretty polished draft. And it was really, my life was kind of filled with literary rejection, as is most fledgling writers. So I put the book in my cyber drawer, and I started on with the next book, which I hope will be the second book in the series. So it was about a year ago in March, I saw an advertisement for a Twitter pitch contest run by pitchwars.org. And so,
Okay.
you know, I'd never been on Twitter. Honestly, I swear, I'd never been on Twitter. And I was asked to describe my book in 144 characters. I figured I'm gonna enter the contest. What have I got to lose, right?
Right.
So in 144 characters, I send my description out into the Twitterverse, and then I get an email from Immortal Works, which is a small publishing company in Salt Lake City, Utah. Okay, we like your pitch. Why don't you send us a couple chapters? Send them a couple chapters. Okay, send us the whole book. Send them the whole book. Then they wrote me back and they said, okay, we want you to tone down the swearing, tone down the sex and gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
Basically clean up the book a little bit, submit it back to us, and, you know, let's see if we can work together. And then I did that. I said, you know what, I'm going for it. And then sure enough, in July, almost a year ago, they sent me a publishing contract, and saying yes was, hands down, was the best decision I ever made.
That is awesome. So I chose to remain independent because I had a situation similar happen to me where somebody reached out and they wanted to make changes and wanted me to do this. And they was really more into my content because I am a nonfiction writer. So what I discovered is they really wanted my content for their books, for their illustrators, for their purposes. I didn't want to give up my content. So I told them no, and that was actually one of the easiest things that I've found. It's a lot easier to say no than it is to agree to something that doesn't really fit your terms, so to speak.
Well, I was really fortunate because as soon as the contract was signed, they matched me up with a very sensitive editor.
Okay.
And I worked together for about 3 or 4 months and went over, 2 or 3 versions of the book. And, she understood where I was coming from. Occasionally, she'd push back on things that I wanted to put in the book. But I would say in general, she really helped me shape the book and was very sensitive to me expressing my voice and not her voice.
Okay. So I know that you got the 2 books that you mentioned. Do you have any other books other than that? Do you have any previous books than that, or is that the only ones?
I have the Seats New York. I have 3 editions of Seats.
Okay.
1998, 2003, and 2008. And then I also did a version of Seats for Chicago. And I did one version of that for the greater Chicago, Wisconsin area, Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. And
Okay.
as I mentioned, I have the rough first draft of the next book in the series, the Midnight Call series, which I call, it's really Queen City Crime series because Poughkeepsie is the Queen City of the Hudson. So I thought it was kind of cool called the Queen City Crime series.
Okay. So if there was any one book that has left a lasting impression on you, what would that book be? Or what is that book?
I'm going to say there are 3 books.
Okay.
The first one's going to have to be To Kill a Mockingbird. I read that when I was very young. It inspired me. It was one of the books that inspired me to want to be an attorney.
Okay.
I mean, there you have a man who's fighting racial prejudice in a very honorable way. And my grandfather was an attorney who reminded me a lot of Atticus Finch. So I had a very strong personal connection to Kill a Mockingbird. Then I'd have to say the next one is Ayn Rand, which is probably like off the charts. Because when I was getting my master's in English literature, she was in our curriculum. And I've read just about every book that the woman has ever written. And her philosophy is individualism.
Okay.
And I certainly believe that, we are all individualists and we should live up to our own human potential. And that was really a very strong theme in her books, which I tried to carry through with all my characters in The Midnight Call. And the last one I mentioned before was Outlander. I mean, I am so sucked into that Outlander universe right now. There are 9 books so far. I'm 8 into, and each book is 1,000 pages.
Wow.
So when you commit to these books, it's a fantasy. For me, it's a total escape. So, but the way that she writes really captures characters, and that's one of the things to work on as I go forward as a writer.
Man,
Oh, and Elmore Leonard. Do you ever read any Elmore Leonard?
No, the books that I read, I mean, if you see my bookshelves behind me, I read a lot of self-help, professional development, business type books, marketing, advertising type things. You know, I tried reading stories, and I've read a few even when I was in college. So I'm gonna date myself 30 years ago. When I was in college 30 years ago, I remember getting this big, giant, thick book in this reading class, literature class that I took, and I was like, I'm not reading that. so I actually struggle with that.
You're a practical guy, but they've made a couple of movies of Elmore Leonard movies, like Get Shorty, which is a really great movie with Danny DeVito and John Travolta. It's a fun movie, and Elmore Leonard writes a lot of crime stories, but they all have like this really wild twist. So for a fun time, watch a movie.
I'm like that. I would absolutely watch a movie. So if your book, The Midnight Call, could be made into a movie, do you have any particular actors that you would like to see play the roles there?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I'm just coming off withdrawing from Game of Thrones. So I like a lot of the actors who are in Game of Thrones. Any of those can play my part. I really like British actors. I don't know if you're familiar with Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, he would make a great Terrence Butterfield. That's all I got to say.
I've heard the name, but like if I saw the guy on the streets, I wouldn't be able to tell you who he is, but I've heard the name, yeah.
He's a Marvel character, Doctor Strange.
Oh, Doctor Strange, okay. I do know who that is then.
And also Sherlock. So he's very, he made being intelligent sexy again. Let's put it that way.
So if you could have any fictional characters that could join you for a dinner party, who would that be?
Oh, okay. That's a real good one. Well, I think I would go with some friends from Outlander. I think I'd invite the lead characters, Jamie and Claire Fraser. I think I'd invite Nick Carraway from The Great Gatsby, who's a fun character. I think I'd invite a couple characters from Atlas Shrugged, Dagny Taggart, and what's his name, John Galt. I think there's another book called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? It's coming out in a movie pretty soon. And I'd invite Bernadette to my party. Alice from Alice in Wonderland and the Mad Hatter, wouldn't they be great to have at a dinner party?
Oh, that would be a blast right there.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Those are just a few that I'd invite over for dinner.
Okay. Well, you know, that would definitely sound like it would be a great dinner party, that's for sure.
And, you know, if I had authors to invite, I think I'd invite Mark Twain. Now, wouldn't he be a great guy to have at dinner?
Absolutely.
He'd be a real hoot.
I believe so, too. So one of the best things that you can do in marketing, let's kind of shift gears a little bit and go into marketing a little bit. So I know marketing, you know, a lot of authors struggle with marketing, and I know that it's really challenging to get out there. There's so many different things that you can do. You got to have a website. You got to have social media. You got to be out in public. You got to go do videos. You got to be live and this, that, and the other. So what marketing has worked for you?
Well, I'm just at the beginning. I mean, the book came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm really at the beginning of the process. I decided early on that I really couldn't put a book tour together myself. Because if I walked into a bookstore and said, "Hi, I'm Jode Millman. I've written a debut novel," they'd all kind of, you know, thumb their noses at me. So I contacted an agency called Merrill Moss Media. And I had met Merrill Moss through Thriller Fest, because that's an annual Thriller Writers Conference, which takes place in New York City in July of every year. And I've been going for about 10 years. And had met Merrill there. So I contacted her, and her staff helped me put together a book tour, which I went to Houston. I'm going to Arizona. I'll be doing Connecticut, New Jersey, South Carolina. I mean, really up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So that really helped.
Well, I know those are some really good places. Do you got any one place you're really looking forward to visiting, though?
Well, you know, we just got back from Houston, which was really kind of cool, because I didn't know that Houston was really kind of a marsh. And, you know, it's a really kind of interesting, it was very humid, very hot, but we were able to go to the NASA Space Center. And I
I've
don't know
been there. It was fun. It was a blast.
fun. Literally, it was a blast. To be able to see that 747 with it was the Independence strapped to its back was just something I will always, always remember. I mean, and just being able to go inside the space shuttle. I mean, how
Yeah,
many people would be able to do that? I mean, maybe
definitely
in
not
the
many.
military, you're used to all this, high fancy technology. But for somebody like me, this was just absolutely out of this world. And we went to mission control. So we got to
Um,
see them being trained to run the International Space Station. And
that's
on
awesome.
monitor, we saw them actually controlling the International Space Station. I'm telling you, it was like mind blowing.
That's absolutely amazing.
It was really incredible.
One of the things that I want to do is I want to go into that room where they take all the air out and you get to do spins and flips and things. I want to do that.
Well, they had two tours. One tour took you to mission control. Another takes you to where the astronauts train. And I'm
Okay.
sure if I'd gone on that one, they would have shown you, all of the astronauts in training in that G-force. I think it's called the G-force room where they
Something like that.
spin you around.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, so like you go really, really fast. You're like up against the wall. Hey, yeah, I think.
Years ago, my kids went to a space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, and they got to actually dress up like astronauts and get on the arm outside the space shuttle and do all kinds of
Oh,
techniques.
wow.
And I thought, hey, if they can do it, Mama can certainly go to Houston and NASA.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got a buddy of mine. Matter of fact, one of the members within Author Teach lives down in Houston, and I know he goes over there quite often. So it's it's kind of neat to be able to talk to him about that. So tell me, what do you have any? What's your current read? What book are you reading now?
I this afternoon I just finished reading a book, and I've got there's a book that came out by Catherine Sepp, CEP, and it's a true story about Harper Lee's investigations of a murder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be reading that because apparently she was quite the researcher and quite the investigative reporter. So this book traces her investigation. So I'm really kind of excited because, as I said, Harper Lee kind of inspired me to become an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of friends that are having books come out. Laura Lippman's got one called Ladies of the Lake. A friend, Carol Goodman, she's won all kinds of mystery awards. She has won the Night Visitor. Allison Galen, who just won an Edgar, has a brand new book coming out. Louise Penny, who's another wonderful mystery writer, has one coming out this summer. So I have friends that have books coming out, and I promise them I'm going to read them.
Well, I got a few TBRs sitting behind me as well too. I haven't read all those books, but I got a few of them that I want to get started on.
Well, you're not supposed to say that. I thought that you read them all. Come on, Terry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got a bunch of other books that are not back there that I've already read that's not on. I need to go get me a couple more bookshelves is what I need to do. So speaking of books, what's next for you? Do you have an upcoming project or an upcoming book? What's going on?
Yeah, I could give you a little teaser about the next installment. We have Jessie Martin, who's my protagonist in The Midnight Call. She teams up with Detective Ebony Jones, who's an old friend of hers who she often finds herself at odds with because you have an attorney going head to head with a cop often when it comes to a criminal investigation. And the two of them investigate what appears to be the mysterious disappearances of 8 women. So they're trying to find out who, in fact, has committed these murders. Is it one person? Is it more than one person? Are the murders at all connected?
Wow.
And it's really, really kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty exciting read.
I hope so. I mean, it's nice to be able to take my characters and kind of, okay, we're moving on. Let's see where they go from here.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll have the antagonist, Terrence Butterfield, pop his head in again.
So, a lot of authors that are out there are looking for like that golden nugget. You know, here's what's going to help me be that bestseller. Here's what's going to help me write that book. Here's what's going to help me get over, you know, that roadblock or that writer's block or whatever the case may be. If you could share one golden nugget from your knowledge and experience with either a young author, up and coming author, even a more seasoned author, what would that golden nugget be?
Well, you know, I think that as writers, we live in a very isolated atmosphere because you have to write alone, you know, you read alone. It's a very solitary business. And so I think that we all have a fear of being able to, once our work is done, bring it to the community. And how is the community going to react? So my one piece of advice is don't be paralyzed by the fear of failure. Use that as an impetus and inspiration to have you achieve things in your life that you never thought you could.
That is a great point. You know, well, you know that I write nonfiction, so I write a lot of motivation, self-help, professional development, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I don't believe in failure.
Right. Okay? I don't either.
I believe in feedback.
Right. That's
because fail often, fail fast. That way you can get to whatever is next, and you can get that feedback so that way you know how to improve that process next time. And
feedback, I think feedback is important, but you have to know how to filter it. Because
I agree with that.
Everybody's coming to you from a very subjective point of view, which is not your own. So you have to be keenly aware as to what is good for you and what isn't good.
Absolutely. I can definitely see your point on how being not really a filter, but I guess so I'm going to use kind of a literary term, paraphrase. So to kind of paraphrase that feedback into something that is, I guess, more interpretive to you. Once again, you hit the nail on the head. It's a perspective. Take that perspective, see how you can take that and put that within your toolkit and progress forward to succeed next time. So anyway, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. It was an absolutely amazing interview. Once again, I love your energy. I love your smile. Great stories. You know, I really love your book. Okay. I think it's going to be a great book. And I know that a lot of people want to be able to connect with your book. And so where can people connect with you at? Where are you at on the internet?
Well, on the web, my website is www.jodesusanmillman.com, and that's JodeSusanMillman.com. They can follow me on Facebook at Jode Susan Millman Author and Instagram at Jode Millman Author. And I hope people do. I mean, it gives me real pleasure when people reach out to me. And I always try to reach out, try to respond to people. This is important.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that I'll have links below the video here to link back to you. And once again, thank you for joining me tonight, okay?
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate it. This is great fun, and I hope to speak to you again when my next book comes out. Absolutely.
All right, so thank you for watching tonight. And if you want to connect with more from Jode Susan Millman, you can do so once again at her website, JodeSusanMillman.com. She's also on Facebook and Instagram. I'll make sure that I have the links below the video. Make sure you go out there, connect with her. If you have her book, leave a review, leave her a comment on social media, follow her, and connect with Jode Susan Millman. Once again, thank you for watching. Keep writing that next bestseller, and I will see you in the next video.